It is 7-ish p.m., almost 7, is what I saw the on-air sign. So we will call this meeting to order, and we will start with our open forum. Each speaker is to keep their comment period to 3 minutes to allow sufficient time for others. Comments are an opportunity to address the HRA, and you can refer to the HRA agenda and minutes webpage for additional ways to submit comments. You can call into the open forum by dialing 1-415-655-0001 using webinar access code 2632-407-6388 and password 1234. And again, this is for the open forum. We do have a public hearing later on as well, but if there's anyone here to speak for the open forum, let us know. I think everyone here is for the public hearing, or is there anybody on the line?
There is not.
Okay. If anybody does join us, please let us know and we'll jump in. We have 2 meeting minutes for approval, and I'm actually going to ask for a change to one of them before we maybe approve them together. So under the regular Housing and Redevelopment Authority meeting of September 18th, 2023, there is a comment that I asked for updates when there were changes made to the law, and it should state changes made to the loans. So if there are changes that are made to the loans, that's when the HRA would requested an update. And then I think the subsequent review kind of followed the same. So we'll make note of that change.
So I would move approval of the special housing redevelopment meeting of August 21st and the regular housing redevelopment meeting of September 18th with the changes that you noted.
Great.
And I will second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any comments, questions, any other changes? Staff, do you know the change? Yes. Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion passes. We will move on to item number 1, which is approval of our agenda. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
And second.
There is a motion for approval and a second. Any comments, questions? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda is approved. And we'll move on to item number 2, which is our consent calendar. And I will turn it over to Executive Director Paleman.
Thank you, Chair Vries-Daniels, members of the board. The consent calendar contains several separate items, in this case actually one item, which is acted upon by the HRA in one motion. Once the consent calendar has been approved, the individual items and recommended actions have also been approved. No further action on these items is necessary. However, the HRA Commission may request that an item be removed from the consent calendar and placed on the regular agenda for HRA discussion. Tonight's consent calendar contains one item. It is consideration of sub-grant agreements with Woodlawn Terrace Cooperative and HomeSource Incorporated for a low-income housing incentive account grant awarded to Woodlawn Terrace for affordable home ownership opportunities. That concludes tonight's consent calendar.
Okay.
I'll move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
The consent calendar has been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the consent calendar is approved. That moves us to item number 3. And I'll direct this over to Executive Director Paleman.
Thank you. Tonight, Economic Development Manager Jan Youngquist will present the report.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. The Business Subsidy Act, set out in Minnesota statutes, regulates business subsidies and requires local units of government to adopt criteria for awarding subsidies after conducting a public hearing. The Business Subsidy Act states that business subsidies must meet a public purpose, which can be goals for jobs, job creation or retention, or other goals such as increasing the tax base, removing blight, or catalyzing future development. A business subsidy recipient must enter into a business subsidy agreement with the grantor. The agreement must include the job and wage goals and the recipient's obligation if the goals are not met. However, after a public hearing, the wage and job goals could be set to 0 if the creation or retention of jobs is not determined to be the primary goal of the subsidy. The HRA and the City Council adopted the existing business subsidy policy in 2002. Much of the financial assistance provided by the HRA is not defined as a business subsidy by the Business Subsidy Act, such as assistance for housing development or assistance of $150,000 or less. However, financial assistance of $25,000 or more, or a business loan of $75,000 or more, they do need to meet the reporting requirements that are set out in statute, and that's reporting to the Department of Employment and Economic Development. State legislature has amended the Business Subsidy Act after the existing business subsidy policy was adopted. Staff has worked with legal counsel to draft the amended and restated business subsidy policy, which is before you this evening, which is updated to comply with the amended act. The changes in the amended policy include the wage floor requirements were increased from 110% of the federal minimum wage in the existing business subsidy policy to 125% of the state minimum wage. The goals outside of job creation and retention were revised to include a project that results in redevelopment along priority commercial corridors or in the downtown area. And a clause was added stating that all references to the Business Subsidy Act include any changes that are made to legislation after this policy is adopted. So this is an item that is going to the council, the HRA, and the EDA, and the council conducted a public hearing on behalf of all three bodies on September 12th. One person spoke at the public hearing, however, the comments were not specific to the business subsidy policy. The council adopted the amended and restated business subsidy policy on September 26th. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take questions.
Before we ask for a motion, does anyone have any questions for staff? I just want one clarifying question. So the changes would only be for new agreements, not existing agreements, is that
Correct.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Anybody else? All right, is there a motion?
I'll move to adopt a resolution approving the amended and restated business subsidy policy.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Yes, go ahead.
So we had a robust discussion of this at the council meeting, and one of the changes came up was that we're going to make sure there's a requirement that you have to comply with labor laws, because they wanted to make sure that if we're subsidizing something, that it's doing, following the rules and treating the workers right. So I was glad to see that change.
Anyone else? All right, seeing no others, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the resolution is approved. Moving us to item number 4. Executive Director Peelman.
Thank you. I'm going to have Assistant Director Julie Urban present this report.
Thank you, Chair Vries-Daniels, members of the HRA. Nasadir Ahmed and Mohammed Issi are applying to purchase the lot at 6326 14th Avenue South from the HRA for the construction of a duplex. The buyers are working with Benjamin Akibi of Bonneau's Homes to construct the home. The buyers are family members who will own and occupy both units in the duplex. The duplex will feature 4 finished bedrooms in each unit and an attached 2-car garage. Each unit will have approximately 2,000 finished square feet. Additionally, the home will include accessibility features such as wider doorways and wheelchair-accessible bathrooms on the main level, as well as sustainability features, including Energy Star certification. In 2021, the substandard home at 6326 14th Avenue was purchased by the HRA for $155,000, with plans to develop the property through the Richfield Rediscovered program. The existing home was deconstructed in 2022, a process by which most of the material was recycled or reused rather than sent to a landfill. The objective of the Richfield Rediscovered program is to replace smaller, substandard, and blighted homes in Richfield with larger market-rate homes that help to diversify the city's housing stock. A request for proposals for the lot at 6326 14th Avenue was released in May 2023, indicating a preference towards applications featuring a duplex. The application from the buyers was the only application received. The property is being sold for $81,500. The property appraised for $121,500 as a vacant lot, but a $20,000 discount is being provided to offset the cost of building a duplex, a $10,000 discount to offset sound attenuation requirements due to proximity to the airport, and an additional $10,000 discount is provided for meeting green credit standards. That's my staff report. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Great. I think we'll start with questions and then maybe open the public hearing, and then we can come back to further questions. Go ahead.
Can we see the plans for the house and kind of walk us through what the duplex is going to look like?
Sure. So this is the site plan. If you can you zoom in a little bit? Thank you. A little less. It's not super easy to see here, but so that you can see that the attached garage is in the back on the west side of the house. And so they will drive in and go around to get into those garage stalls. We did some work with them and our transportation engineer to make sure that that movement would work. It's not maybe the most ideal movement. It's although welcome when we don't have garage doors in the front. That is one of our goals whenever we can do that. So they do meet that requirement. You want to pull up the elevations then?
Is the driveway just on one side for both?
It is on the north side. Yep. So if you could go back the other direction. There you go. So that you can see the street and the sidewalks into the house. And then pull up the elevations. Yep. Thank you. It's not gonna- There we go. There you go. That's some just different perspectives. As you can see, the garage in the back, and so they're basically identical on either side. Very similar to the design of the house we saw over on Newton Avenue last month.
I had received a question because I think this drawing makes that driveway and turn and kind of the back surface area look impossible to turn. But I think the display that you first started with really kind of shows that in its truer fashion, where you are able to turn and has a little bit more surface area to get into there, correct?
So we did have our transportation, we had them go back to the drawing board a couple of times. Actually, the first design was not so workable, and then they ran into lot coverage issues. We also don't want a lot of pavement when we can help it. You'd have a lot less pavement if you were just garage doors in the front, right? So there's a lot of balancing factors going on. So they went back to the drawing board a couple of times, and we did have our transportation engineer run it through a program to confirm the movements, and he had some suggestions for some of those changes to make sure that would work.
Is that why the driveway has like two, I'm sure there's a proper term, but tire tracks, if you will, of cement?
So
the
that
impervious
was
surface?
a choice to not exceed lot coverage, rather than, making the structure smaller. They went with less pavement.
So I'm not requesting any action or any changes from this, but I will say I'm a little bit concerned with both this and the last one, seeing that design of the two-tire track one, just knowing how cars do tend to get off driveways, even on the edges of driveways, so I worry with additional grass in the middle that would become run over, compacted, and effectively impervious surface, and probably looking worse than just a regular driveway. I appreciate that then they would need a variance, so my only encouragement, I think it's great that they put the garage in back and they're able to provide this amenity without visually impacting the block in a negative way. But of course, if this were a detached garage in the rear corner, you could do this and fill out the driveway and not go over the impervious surface. So I guess I do just want to recognize the choice to have a four-car attached garage is a big part of why you need all that pavement to support the full U-turn in the backyard.
Yep, it is actually just two cars, so each has a single stall.
Oh, my mistake. I thought it
Yep,
was
they,
two.
again, because of coverage, they couldn't do that.
Okay,
And
it
they
is
chose
two
that over having a smaller home, so.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Yep.
But yeah,
But you're right.
the attached part is still requiring that
And
big movement.
we talked to them about different options,
Yep.
and this is what they settled on.
Yeah, and I do appreciate that if they're going that direction, that the sort of ugly logistics of the house are contained within that property instead of facing out to the street. So
Yes.
thank you for that.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, I guess I too would have a little bit of concern about kind of this dual two-track driveway, similar to what Councilmember Hayford O'Leary was saying, that it seems like it could get run over. It seems like in the winter particularly, I know people kind of get off track of how they're driving, and I know if you're driving on lawn or turf in the winter, it really impacts the health and the appearance of it. So I guess I would be somewhat concerned about that, and if you all of a sudden have kind of like a dead zone there in the middle, then it becomes somewhat of an eyesore. One other question I have is that I know that on the architectural drawings we're looking at, we're not seeing the landscaping plans, and I know in the packet we received, there's all sorts of information about the city requirements for landscaping. And so maybe this stage is too soon for that, but what is the process again for ensuring that the standards are met after the home is built? And I drove by and took a look at the property, and I see that there's a number of large mature trees on the property, which can fulfill the standard of 4 trees, up to 4 trees if the site allows for it. Is the plan to remove those trees, start fresh, or to preserve the mature trees that are there?
So I'll respond to sort of the process first, and then actually I may ask the builder to come forward. So we go back and forth. We would like to see a full landscape plan at this point, but it's a lot asking when they don't even know if they're going to get the lot. And so we have compromised by saying, well, these are the standards. You need to make sure you're going to meet these standards. And the Richfield Rediscovered landscaping standards go above and beyond what the typical zoning requirements would be. So we do have extra rules, especially relating to green standards now. So what they will do is when if they get approved and if you agree to sell them the lot, then their next job is to put all their plans together for building permits, and one of those plans needs to be a landscape plan, and then that gets reviewed by both the planner from the code perspective, but then also our housing specialists will review that and need to sign off on that plan before the permit is issued, and then we close on the lot once it's building permit ready. As far as preserving the trees, they aren't great quality trees, so we've had to remove a couple already at the HRA's expense because of some storm damage and some other things that we had to deal with. But there are a couple in the back that in theory could be saved. But, we're going to make sure and want to know that there's some quality trees. And we'll like to see, and the zoning ordinance will require something in the front as well. But Ben Akibi, the builder, is here. If you would like to, he can maybe answer more specifically what he's thinking about the trees if he's gotten to that stage. Would you like him to come forward, or?
Sure, that would be great if you would
Ben, if you could come forward to the
address
microphone. Thank
address
you.
the commission.
Benjamin Achigbe from Bernard's Homes. So when we start the process, excuse me, we start with a survey, site plan, and we set the house on the property. So that's how we find out what's going to be saved and what's not going to be saved. Sometimes if they are very big trees, trying to save them, when you dig the foundation, the roots get compromised. So within a couple of years, it's a danger to the house. So our plan is, again, after doing the site plan, we have a list already of the trees that are acceptable and what sizes. So we're going to design to that effect. It's hard to say now what's just visually looking at the lots. We have setback requirements that we're going to meet. And if we meet that, then some trees are going to be compromised, so. But we intend to do the landscaping plan, that zoning requires. So. Good.
Great, thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. And I'm obviously new to this. This is my second HRA meeting, so forgive me if I'm asking questions that maybe I should know by now. But is there any requirement for the buyers to occupy the house? I understand they're a family and they plan to occupy it. Are they required to occupy the duplex for a period of time?
So we place it in our guidelines that this is intended for owner occupancy. We have not put on any sort of restriction or declaration. I think we were burned once, and it was actually a case where the person got transferred. They had never intended to rent it when they were done. So we don't have those strict requirements. We just go into it with that, letting people know that that's the intention, and it's been successful. We have not been burned more than that one time.
Okay, all right. Do you ensure that the buyer has the funds to pay for any cost overruns during construction if something goes wrong and there's a dramatic cost increase?
So the financing is their responsibility. What we require is a letter from the lender saying that they've been approved for a loan and a mortgage in order to construct the home.
Okay, for the project cost?
For the project.
Okay. Is there a deadline to start construction? I noticed in the contract there's a deadline to finish, but is there a deadline to start?
I believe closing is within 6 months, so we have a closing deadline, and so they wouldn't necessarily have to start, but they would be permit ready at that point.
Okay.
Sorry, back to Commissioner Hanson. Also part of the process is we do require a $10,000 escrow, and so that doesn't get returned from the HRA until all the HRA's requirements are met at the conclusion.
Just want to be super clear on the process, because I think typically we see a little bit more before we sell it. So these are the preliminary plans. They will go through review to meet all of the green ratings and so forth that they are getting discounts for before we close. If they do not meet those green ratings in the plans, then the sale will be for more at closing than what we have listed in front of us. Is that fair?
No, we wouldn't sell them the lot if they didn't meet the requirements because it's in the contract. They've said they're going to do that. So that is an expectation.
Great. Thank you for clarifying that. All right. Anybody else have any questions this time? Yes, go ahead.
Just one other details I noticed in looking at this property physically. There's a curb cut on the south end of the property. Is that going to be removed when the new driveway goes in on the other side of the property?
Yes, we would expect that to be removed and filled in. Yep.
Okay, thank you. And then just to say, I'm excited about another duplex, and this does look quite nice. For half a second, I was disappointed. It looked almost the same as last month, and then I realized, of course, my house and many Richfield houses look exactly the same as many other houses. So more power to them.
All right. Anybody else have questions at this time? All right. So we will open the public hearing then. If anybody would like to come and speak at the public hearing, you can come up to the podium, just state your name and address and write it down, and you can give your feedback to us. And we do typically limit to 3 minutes. So.
I'm a interested bystander because I own the property with my sons immediately to the south of this particular property. My name is Todd Siegfried. My sons are Andrew and Anthony. We closed on that property at 6332, I think in March 2020. We've been slowly and painstakingly, diligently trying to get it up to speed. But so we are interested. We talk about the trees. There's lots of trees that are on this proposed property that hang over our property. I've already talked to the city a couple of times. Some of the tree removal was done, and some has yet to be done. So I'm interested in the resolution of the trees. Someone said the trees aren't particularly good quality trees. I would second that motion. But I have a concern about that. I guess my overall concern, I'm thrilled to hear that there's requirements all along the way for this property. And some of the questions are, there's a process in place. A lot of this seems like it's based on good faith. The property is going to be sold for $81,500 or whatever it is, but they're going to be green. There's certain things that they have to meet. So my big question is, all of these steps along the way to get to a property that guarantees the neighborhood a market valuation of $800,000 when it's all said and done, Are there steps along the way that the builder and the buyers and everybody has to meet? How is this, once the property is sold and closed, how is all of this judged that it's proceeding as it should?
So typically during public hearings, we don't answer questions, but I think I have a similar question, so we can address that after the fact.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's my big question then.
Okay, thank you
Thank
for
you.
coming. Anyone else? Do you want to speak? No questions. You could pose your questions. We don't always have a back and forth answer period though, but would love to hear your thoughts or questions. Yeah.
I'm a neighbor to the north on 6308, and also.
Can I have you speak into the microphone to make sure anybody watching can hear you?
Oops, sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
Neighbor to the 8th, to the north, 6308. And I'm excited to see new construction. Whoever the builder was that has placed some of these single-family, two-story units, they're very nice. My concern, again, too, is the good faith aspect of it, because I've moved in and found a couple of the neighbors to be renters when they said they were homeowners, and then became absentee, and then to the detriment of the yard and the rundown kind of look, and no raking done, and trees have fallen into my house and stuff. So not that theirs would fall in, but I'm just thinking, again, of that central green space that's going to fall into probably disrepair after one Minnesota winter. They're going to want to shovel their driveway or use a snow blower, and how is that blower going to be narrow enough to miss that little grass piece, whatever. So my thing is on aesthetics, and the other, is there a limit to how many people can rent the second unit, the number of people? And the other one is, there should be really a requirement if they're going to occupy it, they should live there instead of couple months and then leaving, and I'm only saying that because it happened to me with neighbors. So is there an opportunity to ask questions down the line?
Yes, I believe you can always reach out to staff to ask questions, either email on the website or phone, and they can answer anything at that time.
Okay, and are they going to ask for neighbor input again at any other forum, or will it just sail through and this was kind of our chance?
Can you address that?
So this is the opportunity to talk about, the HRA to consider whether they're going to sell them the property and let them move forward. What our housing specialists will do is they'll send a letter out to the neighborhood if it gets approved and a permit is issued, and to let you know, and they will be giving you Ben's phone number, the builder's phone number. So if you have issues during construction, you can either call there or you can call Ben. You can call the housing specialist, and then we also give you the number if he were to work outside of the allowed business hours. We give you a number because say he started at 5 a.m., which he doesn't do. Sure. We've worked with him before. He's a very responsible builder, but say that happened, to call us at 9 isn't helpful. So we need you to call the non-emergency public safety number. So we'll be giving those kinds of information out to the neighborhood for primarily about construction process.
Okay, yeah, so there's going to be some oversight. It's not just going to be good luck.
Oh, right. Well, and the inspectors are there monitoring the construction, and then the housing specialists are always available to talk through issues.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else here for the, yes, go ahead.
If she could just identify herself for the record, we didn't get a name.
Dana Anderson at 6308. I was here on August 8th, saw everybody here.
Thank you so much. Anybody else for the public hearing? All right. Is there a motion to close?
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second?
Any comments? All right, it has been moved and seconded to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The public hearing is closed. I think I just have a quick question. So my question was really around what is that process to make sure these checks are in place? And so I do want to make sure that the good faith about keeping ownership versus rentership is true of all of Richfield, right? Not just particular to this house, that we would follow the same rental guidelines that if it were to be rented as the rest of the city code applies to this housing as well, even though that's not our intention. Is that correct? That it's not our intention for it to be rented. The intention is for living, but they would need to follow all of their guidelines if it were.
That's exactly true. And I will say with a duplex, this is new territory, and the guidelines say, there's one side should be occupied by an owner. In this case, both sides, it's two family members that are going to be owning both sides, so it wouldn't be rental. Whereas in theory, we could do a Richfield rediscovered house where there's an owner on the one side and they rent the other side. But yes, they would be required to have a rental license, which gets inspected every 2 years, and we are always available if there are issues with property maintenance in any home. But through rental, you've got double. You've got code enforcement you can call, and you can call our inspectors as well.
Can you say that again about duplexes? Is it a requirement that all duplexes, one side, be owner occupied? Is that what I heard you say?
The ordinance?
Members of the board, no, there is no owner occupancy requirement for duplexes in Richfield.
Okay,
It's a Richfield rediscovered requirement.
thank you. Okay. And then they'll have to meet all other building code and projects, and if it does need to go before the planning commission, if they needed any exceptions to our current rules regarding building, it would go to the planning commission.
That is correct, but they won't need any exceptions based on this plan. What's before you is what they are required to build by their contract.
Perfect,
We won't
okay.
sell them the lot if they don't bring us plans that meet these rules.
But we're not operating in a good faith that they are building.
No, they need to do what they've showed. Yep.
Perfect.
They're going to
Okay,
make,
just wanna be
minor changes maybe, but anything major would have to come back before you.
Okay, great. Yes, go ahead.
So in this contract that we're going to decide on shortly, there's a section about the certificate of completion. Is that where you would make sure all of these things had happened before we signed off on it?
Exactly. Yep. And the executive director does sign that, but yeah, it's based on, they need a certificate of occupancy from the building official. So all the code requirements have to be met, but then our housing specialists also have to go through and make sure that anything extra from Richfield Rediscovered is met. And that's why we have that $10,000 escrow to hold, because our building official can't hold up a code or can't hold up a CO based on something that's not a building code item. And so that's for those extra things is what we hold that.
One more, I just want to make sure I understand it. The Richfield Rediscovered program requires that a duplex in this program, that one side of it is owner occupied. Is that correct?
Yes, that's our expectation, yes.
Okay, right, and that's in the program guidelines?
Right.
Thank you.
One last question. If we, and you may not be able to answer this because it's more planning, but if we were to ask that they fill the driveway in fully, would that then need a variance to go in front of the planning commission?
They would either need a variance or they would have to adjust some other way.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Anybody else have any? Yes, go ahead.
I think just the one clarification, and it's just a different version of what the chair had already said, but just to be clear for the folks who spoke, we're discussing this and we're holding them to these high standards specifically because they're buying it from the HRA and they're getting a discount on the property. So just to note that physically they could buy any property and they could build this without any special permission. They could just go for building permits. So I guess that's just helpful for me to remember that physically they're not getting any exceptions, that this could be built on any lot that it fits on. I did have one additional follow-up question, which is now escaping me as I did not write it down. Shoot, this is completely.
Well, maybe we'll ask for a motion and then maybe it'll.
come back to me
All
then.
right.
Thank you.
Chair,
Yes.
there was one additional question about the
yes.
number of people that are allowed to occupy either side, and I just wanted to answer that. There are occupancy standards. They are part of the city code. It's based on the size of rooms, the number of bedrooms. It's a calculation that's made, and that is how that is regulated. It's not a specific number of people per household.
Thank you.
I remembered my question. Madam
Yes,
Chair.
go ahead.
Thank you. Just because this did come up, and it was a question from one of the other commissioners as well. Since one of the goals is to increase owner occupancy, why do we do it kind of wishy-washy? Like, why don't we have a covenant if that's a priority of the program?
You know, I inherited the program 12 years ago, and that wasn't a requirement then, and we, again, haven't had issues, so we haven't added it. It's one more thing. Yeah, I mean, we could do a declaration. We've never, it's,
Okay, and I'm not necessarily asking that we do it, I'm just curious if the goal is that either is it more legal work and more money for us to do it, or is it just we want some level of flexibility built in?
presumably, and more of a discouragement perhaps, because then how long do you, is that a forever declaration of covenants on the
Okay.
property? Are you saying they can never, ever? What if, in the case of the family where he got transferred, you know,
Okay.
and the market was bad at the time, they couldn't sell it, you know, so for what they had just put into it, so.
Yeah, okay.
So, I would add just one thing too, if the neighbor to the south wanted to leave me his contact info just to make sure, but we certainly would like to make sure that the landscape plan, we deal with those. I know there's some volunteers and stuff along a fence line that we can certainly work with him to make sure that it works for both
Volunteer
sides.
trees.
Yeah, there's, sorry. Volunteers. The lingo we use, yeah. But there's a fence in there, so it was kind of complicated, and yeah, we certainly want to see it cleaned up, and would work with him to have it work well.
Thank you for always working with the neighborhood on things. Appreciate that. Okay, is there a motion?
Do you want this as one motion or two motions?
Staff, what would you like?
You can combine them if you'd like. I think it just reads a little easier when it's broken into two like that, however you want to do it.
All right, so I would move to adopt a resolution authorizing the sale of 6326 14th Avenue South to Nasadir Ahmed and Mohammed Isse, and authorize execution of a contract for private development between the Housing and Redevelopment Authority with Nasadir Ahmed and Mohammed Isse for the redevelopment of 6326 14th Avenue South.
There's a motion for the recommended action. Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. We want to stop for comments, questions. I will say, when we bought this house, I was not thrilled about us buying up housing, and staff at the time was very clear about their goals for this, was to put a duplex on it. And I just want to say thank you for all the hard work to make this happen and to fulfill our guidelines of the vision of the HRA, to be able to build more types of housing. And it's really nice to see this kind of come full circle, and I'm excited to see more duplexes, especially, and showing kind of others how they can be built on these size lots. So I know it's a tricky with the driveway, and I think sometimes we need to test some things out and see and make it work as best we can. So thank you for the staff, and thank you for the builders. So I am supportive of this. Anybody else? Questions, comments? All right, it has been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. That takes us, thank you everyone for coming too. Really appreciate that. And you're welcome to stick around. Next on our agenda is HRA discussion items. Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to say thank you to all the people that opened up their homes for the renovation celebration. I was able to go around and see the 6 homes, and there was a lot of really cool ideas. Especially, I was really intrigued by the person that had the heated bathroom floor so that you keep your feet warm as you're walking around. So I know that's like a little thing, but I hadn't thought about that before. So thank you to everybody that made that possible. And then last week was Fire Prevention Week. And it's really struck home to me because in the last 2 weeks, I know of 2 different people that have lost their homes to fires, and we also had a business fire here in Richfield. So please check your smoke detectors and make sure your batteries are working, and do everything you can to prevent further fires. Thank you.
I wanted to second on the Richfield Rediscovered tour. I got to spend the afternoon in a house and greet lots of people as they came in, and got so much fantastic feedback from lots of people, how much they loved the program, were really excited to see it up and running, and how well it was organized to have everyone come in. And so huge kudos to the staff. I think Celeste and Brian kind of run that and organize all of that, and it was a really terrific event, and excited to see more of that in the future. So it was a lovely, lovely day for it as well, so fantastic. Anybody else? Okay. That takes us to item number 6, Executive Director's Report.
Thank you, and I'll just piggyback on that. I just wanted to give you an estimate on the numbers, and we think, it's hard to tell, not everybody signs in at the homes, but taking a guess, we think between 350 and 400 people came through the tour. So well-received, well-attended, the weather helped. So thank you for those who volunteered and for everyone who came out.
Anything else? All right. That takes us to item number 7, claims. Is there a motion to approve claims?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it has been moved and seconded. Any comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The claims are approved. That takes us to adjournment of the HRA. Thank you, everyone. We will pause for a few minutes before the EDA. Thanks. All right, is everybody good to go? All right, I will call to order the Economic Development Authority meeting of October 16th, 2023. It is 7:42. At this moment, we will do the oath of office for John Young. Head over to the podium there.
Raise your right hand, repeat after me. I, John Young,
I, John Young,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of
and
Minnesota
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota
and the Charter and ordinances of the City of Richfield,
and the Charter and ordinances of the City of Richfield,
that I will faithfully execute and discharge the duties
and that I will faithfully execute and discharge the duties
of the Office of Commissioner of the Economic Development Authority
of the Office of Commissioner of the Economic Development Authority
of the City of Richfield,
of the City of Richfield,
according to the law and to the best of my ability and understanding.
according to the law and to the best of my ability and understanding. Thank you.
Welcome to the EDA.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, this moves us to the open forum. So each speaker is to keep their comment period to 3 minutes to allow sufficient time for others. Comments are an opportunity to address the EDA. Please refer to the EDA agenda and minutes webpage for additional way to submit comments. You may also call 612-861-9764 or email ldubois@richfieldmn.gov with questions. You can call into the open forum right now by dialing 1-415-655-0001 using webinar access code 2632-407-6388, and the password is 1234. Is anyone on for the open forum?
There is not.
All right, someday someone's going to call. So if anybody does call in, let me know, and we will interrupt. All right, so first meeting on our agenda is approval of the minutes of the regular Economic Development Authority meeting of August 21st, 2023. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Any comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. All right, that takes us to item number 1, which is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion for approval?
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded for the approval of the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The agenda is approved. Item number 2, I will pass this off to Executive Director Palman.
Thank you, President Reese-Daniels. I will ask Economic Development Manager Jan Youngquist to present the report.
Thank you. Excuse me. President Reese-Daniels and Commissioners, this might sound a little familiar to you. The Business Subsidy Act, Minnesota statutes, regulates business subsidies, requires local units of government to adopt criteria for awarding subsidies after conducting a public hearing. The HRA and the City Council adopted the existing business subsidy policy in 2002. The EDA was formed in 2017 and is subject to the existing business subsidy policy. The legislature has amended the Business Subsidy Act after the existing business subsidy policy was adopted. Staff worked with legal counsel to draft the amended and restated business subsidy policy, which is updated to comply with the amended Business Subsidy Act. The City Council held a public hearing on behalf of the city, the HRA, and the EDA on September 12th. The Council adopted the amended and restated business subsidy policy on September 26th, and the HRA adopted it about 30 minutes ago. That concludes my presentation.
Great. Thank you. Anybody have any questions that have come up since 30 minutes ago? It's okay if you don't. All right, seeing none, is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second?
The resolution has been moved and seconded. Asking again for comments, questions, concerns? All right, seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The resolution has been passed. Takes us to item number 3.
Thank you. I will once again ask Economic Development Manager Youngquist to present the report.
Thank you. In 2022, the EDA contracted with John Stark of Enduring Cities to evaluate the business assistance programs offered by the EDA and to make recommendations for programs moving forward. Mr. Stark prepared the business assistance analysis and recommendations report, which was accepted by the EDA in April of this year. One of the desired outcomes for business assistance identified in the report is to provide small and emerging businesses with a source of technical assistance and possibly fee relief to help them launch and grow. With regard to technical assistance, staff shares information with small and emerging businesses about the Elevate Hennepin program. It's sponsored by Hennepin County with financial support from the EDA. It's a tremendous resource. Elevate Hennepin has more than 30 expert advisors who provide free technical assistance for businesses. In the second quarter of this year, 12 Richfield businesses received a total of 124 hours of free services through Elevate Hennepin. The program was created in late 2020, and so since its inception, Elevate Hennepin has served 54 businesses in Richfield with 470 hours of technical assistance. With regard to fee relief, staff is proposing that the EDA establish a small business sewer availability charge assistance program to help newer expanding small businesses with fees associated with connecting to the regional sewer system. So the Metropolitan Council assesses a sewer availability charge known as SAC when a property connects to the regional sewer system for the first time. The SAC fee is based on the estimated amount of wastewater generated by the activities on the site, such as food preparation, restroom use, dishwashing, etc. The fee contributes to the construction and maintenance of the regional sewer system and sanitary sewer treatment facilities. The Met Council may also charge SAC when a business grows or changes the use of its space, which might create more demand on the sewer system. So the one-time SAC fee is collected from the business owner by the city, and it's paid to the Met Council when a building permit is issued. Businesses contact Met Council for what's called a SAC determination letter, which includes a calculation of the number of SAC units due. Businesses are required to submit that SAC determination letter to the city when they apply for a building permit. The current fee for one SAC unit is $2,485. It's not uncommon for businesses to be charged or assessed multiple SAC units when there's a change in use of the building that creates more wastewater being generated. For example, a retail building that's being converted into a restaurant. 2 small restaurants that recently opened in Richfield were each assessed 8 SAC units, which resulted in fees of almost $20,000 for each business owner. These fees can create a financial hurdle for new and expanding small businesses. So under the proposed program before you tonight, an eligible business may qualify to receive financial assistance for up to 50% of the SAC fees assessed by Met Council, with a maximum of 4 SAC units paid by the EDA. Eligible businesses must be located in Richfield, be independently owned, have 25 or fewer FTE employees, and have been assessed at least 2 SAC units by the Met Council. Funds to the program would be awarded to qualifying applicants on a first-come, first-served basis. Approvals will be granted by the EDA Executive Director and processed by the city's Permit and Inspections Division for payment and reporting to the Met Council. A business owner whose application was denied by the EDA Executive Director may appeal the decision to the EDA. So staff is proposing to budget $20,000 annually for the program, which is anticipated to provide financial assistance for 8 SAC units. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to take questions.
Does anyone have any questions? No one? I have a few. I went on a deep dive of SAC since this came out across in our packet. And I know we talked about this a while ago, right, through the meeting with John Stark, but I think my question around the purpose is to reduce the barriers by expanding or starting a small business is the way it is written today is really open to everyone for the most part. I have some additional questions on that. But there's no guidelines for how do we assess if it is actually removing barriers within the program, right? And so we're assuming that everyone has a barrier, or if they do, they will apply to this, but nothing stops every single business from applying for this. And so I think my question is, how are we ensuring that the money that we're using this is truly reducing barriers to help us increase small businesses, and perhaps small businesses that wouldn't have come here because this is a barrier versus being open to all? And so that's probably a bigger, broader question that maybe won't be answered this evening, but something that's on my mind as we look at this. And then my second question is regarding the ineligibility. So we have listed that sexually oriented businesses, pawn shops, tobacco, marijuana shops, gun shops, or check cashing businesses are not allowed. I'm surprised that we're being that specific on the type of businesses that are not allowed, and that we are, I might say this wrong, but allowed to discriminate in that way. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that, on why those particular businesses?
Sure. May I start with your first question?
Yes, thanks.
So really, so in looking at this program, a retail business is not likely going to need assistance from this program. Because it's tied to wastewater flow, there are certain types of businesses that this is really going to help. Restaurants are probably the biggest, salons, breweries, and daycares. I took a deep dive into the Met Council SAC determination calculator, and those were the big uses that came up. I would say that restaurants, there's a pretty slim margin for restaurants, and I, quite frankly, was really surprised when I started looking at what SAC fees had been paid, and the restaurants I'm citing are very small, and to have $20,000 hit that you might not have been anticipating, I think really could be a big surprise and a deterrent to somebody trying to open that type of business. We looked very carefully at the eligibility criteria and really tried to hone in on who, targeting businesses that might really need the help. And the way we did that is looking at independently owned, so it's not part of a McDonald's franchise, 25 or fewer FTE. And so we kind of tailored it That way, we are going to be encouraging businesses owned by women, Richfield residents, and people of color. In discussions with our attorney, we could not build those into the criteria. So that's how we tried to tailor the program to really get at who will need and benefit from the funds. With regard to your question on the specificity, it's quite common for business assistance programs to set aside types of uses that may be criticized by the public of the city providing assistance to a pawn shop or a gun store. Quite honestly, those type of uses probably won't trigger large SAC fees. But you may amend the program if you so wish.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I had similar questions about the eligibility with regard to an owner's financial position. I think there are some people who open restaurants who probably don't need the $20,000 help to get over that hurdle. Did you look at examining financial statements or financial position of the owner to determine if there really was a barrier? Did you have any conversations about that when you put the program together?
No, we did not. We were looking at trying to have a program that's easily administered. I looked into other communities in the metro area. There's a couple that have somewhat similar programs. Bloomington has a program, and Brooklyn Park does. The programs were modeled after those programs, and we were trying to keep it not administratively burdensome.
Yeah, I can understand that. Overall, I'm in favor of it. I think SAC charges are a big barrier in a lot of businesses, so overall, I'm in favor of it. I just do have that concern about it, though.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, I have to say, I learned about the SAC charges when we had our consultant, John Stark, do the project for us, and it certainly was news to me, and we've had a lot of conversations over time about how we want to get more small independent businesses in town, and I think, boy, all of a sudden if you're hit with, such a large fee when you're that small business on a shoestring trying to get going, that I could see the SAC charge being just the thing that would keep you from actually moving forward to open that business. So I certainly support the theory of this particular proposal. I guess as far as, if there's people who would apply for it who wouldn't need the assistance, I guess I would put faith in our executive director, who I guess under this proposal has the option to deny the distribution of these funds. So I would put faith in our executive director to make, a good common sense decision. But overall, I think, if our goal is to get more of those small independents in town, I think this is a good step forward.
Sure.
Yes, go ahead.
Commissioner Hansen's question raised a question for me, which what would cause the executive director to deny an application?
Thank you, members of the board. So the guidelines call for a case-by-case review of a project, and I think that the parameters as they're set up, where they're limiting the number of employees, they're looking for the specific type of business, I think that's going to be enough to not really have that come up. However, if it did, there's always an option to bring this to the board for consideration. There's always an option to re-examine the guidelines if they aren't doing what we want, what we're targeting them to do. I'd also say that over the last several years, a lot of the feedback we get from the community is that we want restaurants. And people don't want chain restaurants, they want restaurants. And so I think that even if there was someone who came in and you have this idea that they probably could afford this, the idea that there's this program that's going to encourage them to build something in Richfield, that's good for our community. That's what our community wants anyway. And so it seems like this incentive is perhaps meeting our goals anyway.
Could I ask one more clarifying question? I'm aware of a couple of different restaurant, I would call them chains, here in the Twin Cities, but that maybe they have 3 or 4 restaurants, and we've probably all visited them. Would they be excluded because they have a corporate headquarters, that, like a separate office where they control all the operations of their restaurants? Is that the intent of that language, corporate headquarters?
Yeah, the intent was really to get at large chains. I know there are some smaller restaurants that have different locations throughout the Twin Cities. I was trying to get at with the corporate headquarters. I don't know that some of the restaurants that I'm thinking of that have a few locations have corporate headquarters. It was really trying to get away from true chain restaurants.
Yeah. There are a few that have their own separate offices to run the various restaurants in their ownership. And I don't know if the term corporate headquarters really gets at excluding them, because they probably wouldn't need the subsidy as opposed to somebody else.
If I could just add, just a couple of, I'm thinking of like Parasole restaurants or Pizza Luce or Crave would all be like, I think, examples of what you're talking about, where they're local chains, but they're not, it's not a Perkins or a National, yeah. Just to be clear, so if you, let's say you did have a Pizza Luce, we already have a Pizza Luce, of course, and they've already paid their SAC fees. If you had something like that and they were denied for that, would they be eligible to appeal that to this board, or would there be no way to proceed because they go against the guidelines?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear the first part of your question.
So if you had let's say we didn't have a Pizza Luce in Richfield. Pizza Luce applied, they have a corporate headquarters, so they don't meet the guidelines. The executive director denies it as a result. Do they have the option to appeal to us, or could we not approve it because the guidelines say no?
Oh, that's a great question.
I would say that they have the option to appeal to you, but what they'd be appealing is, they'd be asking for a revision to your guidelines,
Okay.
as opposed to a true appeal or variance.
But we could act at that moment to change the guidelines to accommodate that request.
I believe you could, yes.
Okay. That seems fine to me in terms of addressing that concern. The one other just small clarifying question I had about the ineligible businesses, and I think I know the answer to this, but I just want to be sure to ask it. When we say marijuana shops, we mean places that are primarily selling that. We would not mean, for example, a restaurant selling THC beverages, which would be fairly common now.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So I had asked the executive director about this. Since we're nearing the end of 2023, this is not retroactive, correct? But the funds could carry over into the future? Can you say more about that?
So it would not be retroactive because to previous businesses that have received a building permit, because the fees are paid to the Metropolitan Council and through the program, and their fees have already been paid to the Met Council. With regard to, we're looking at $20,000 for next year. We think that this is not a program that's going to be heavily used, but the ones that utilize it, it's going to be a huge, huge help for them. But we could look at allocating additional funds if it is very successful next year, and we do have a lot of demand for it.
And then, this is not a question, but because it's not about the sewer availability charge, but I did want to lift up the Elevate Hennepin program, because I've been hearing lots and lots of positive feedback about that program.
Excellent. Anybody else? Questions? Okay. Is there a motion anybody want to make a motion?
Well, I'll make a motion to approve the Small Business Sewer Availability Charge Assistance Program and the use of $20,000 of Economic Development Authority funds for its implementation.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any comments, questions, concerns? excited we're making progress with the EDA and building out programs. So I am very excited we're starting to look at these sort of things and understand what it is. And I am supportive of this in the short term. I want to see kind of how it works, how it's happening, how the guidelines, and then much like a lot of our other programs, come back and look at it and see how it's doing and what we need to change. And I think it's a great start down that path. I do think one maybe future thing, if we are looking to specifically help restaurants, you know, people with high SAC feeds, I appreciate that it's structured in a way to incentivize that based on the number of SACs that we believe they will use and need. And so maybe for future, we can get more specific to say this is for restaurants, if that's what we're really trying to encourage, and be incredibly specific. But I think it's good to leave it pretty broad and see kind of what comes forward, because there may be things that we don't necessarily think about as well. So I appreciate that. Okay, anybody else? All right, there's a motion. It has been moved and seconded for approval of the Small Business Sewer Availability Charge Assistance Program for Richfield businesses. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion passes. Thank you. Thanks for the discussion as well. All right, item number 4, EDA discussion items. Thinking about the success of the HRA housing tour, or the housing tour that was just happening, what would it look like to do one for businesses? Curious. So just something to think about for future, like what would a tour of some of our newly small businesses look like for the community, and so forth, since that was such great feedback from our residents for the housing version. I would love to see an economic version of that too at some point. So just a thought. Anybody else? Cool. Number 5, executive director's reports.
Thank you. Kind of dovetailing off of that, we have started to talk about the holiday season is coming. Talk about Small Business Saturday and what we might do to lift up and promote some of our small businesses here. Last year there was a proclamation at our declaring that Saturday, Small Business Saturday, but we didn't really have anything in place. Jan was not on board yet. We had some window clings, but we got them a couple days or the day before. So this year we have staff in place. We've got a little more time to think about that. So, you know, maybe there's a passport, or maybe there's something like that. But we are thinking about something related to Small Business Saturday and how we can do that. And that concludes my report.
Awesome. That's very exciting. Thanks. Do we have claims for the EDA?
I'll move adoption of the claims.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Claims are approved. That takes us to adjournment. Thank you, everyone.